are a select few films, media that to me speak to some secret, hidden, sensual world that we can all feel, sense, but don't speak of. Things like Twin Peaks or Blair Witch, the idea of watching Blair Witch in the 90s and thinking that it's real. And I'm so happy to say that this book did that for me. Hi, I'm Olivia. This is AV Club, where I talk about horror, lit fic, weird books, whatever I want to talk about. And today I am so excited that I am doing a review of October Film Haunt by Michael Wehunt. And this is coming out on the 30th of September in the United States. It's the 30th in Australia right now. I just finished this last night and I wanted to speak about this book because it really did so much for me. This is not going to be a horror book for everyone. And I think some of those things that I typically look for in horror books, that I love, like a really pacey, fun book, that I love something that is, very genre focused and doesn't take itself too seriously. This is not that. And to its great benefit, it is so much more for me. This is definitely a slow burn, pretty slowly paced horror book that really relishes in the time that is spent reading it and the time that is spent waiting for stuff to happen. And that's because of specific elements that are in this book. It becomes kind of like a meta textual experience, something like reading House of Leaves, and the upsetting way that you have to read the book really drives the plot home. This is definitely a book for you if you love horror movies. However, it's really reminding me more of horror movies that I've never felt have any kind of similarities in books before. But I'll get to that later. Let me handle the plot first. The October Film Haunt follows a main character named Jory Stroud, which took most of the book for me to realize was a reference to Laurie Strode of Halloween franchise. And it's following her post popularity. She had previously run a very popular horror blog called the October Film Haunt with a couple of friends. But it seems like something happened in the past and they had to kind of suddenly, maybe tragically, stop the blog. However, there was this movie that was so important and was really the cause of the beginning of the end of the blog, called Proof of Demons, which is a very spooky sounding found footage type horror movie. And this is really where it reminds me of something like Twin Peaks or Blair Witch, the idea of real demons in this world that are not so tied to religious imagery or Christianity, anything like that. Like, it's more that demons are real and they are loose, they are chaos, they are not ruled by good and evil, that it is something that is altogether different, a spiritual world that is secular. And that really does it for me. So, in this Proof of Demons movie, there's these rituals that are imbued within the film itself, that there's 6 minute long transfigurations where nothing happens. But as part of this ritual, and this has been revived in current day. Now that she is no longer popular, not running this thing, she has moved very far away to a rural Vermont lifestyle and doesn't really want any part of her past anymore, that she doesn't want to really be found. But one day she is sent a VHS in the mail. This is where our story begins, of a funeral, watching a funeral scene. And really, for me, this reminded me of the one segment in VHS, Viral, maybe, where it is like a recording of a funeral and like weird stuff happens, but it's more so about watching the crowd and picking things out. first she thinks that it is just like the Proof of Demons movie, but then she realizes that the trees are not the trees from the previous video, that they're trees that are growing close to her in her new Vermont home. So she has questions about where this movie came from, if it's fans, crazed fans that are, trying to reenact it, make a fan version of it. And this is just like a thing that takes off on the internet, that this like movie was almost like a Blair Witch word of mouth sensation, and that people do believe that there's like something real about it. Both people who believe that there's something real about it, but also just treating it as if there's something real about it, that it's part of the game to treat it as if it is real. So much of this book does feel like a movie to me, like the way things are described. It's like this oblique way where it feels kind of like you're watching things at a distance from a very filmic angle. And it is so, so well written. This is like a very literary horror. And to me, if something is described as a literary horror before I go into it, I have some reservations that I think, are you ashamed? Are you ashamed to be horror? Are you ashamed to be genre? However, for me, this book's wordiness and slow pacedness did not get in the way of it telling a great genre story. It really added to the feeling of it. I also do think that whenever things are described as literary horror, sometimes that it has like a very clear viewpoint that it wants you to perceive things as. But I feel like the author had a great sense of trust in the reader to be able to extrapolate and make those societal arguments on their own without having to be heavy handed with it. That and I think that's what's great about horror, and that's one reason why people of all different backgrounds love horror, and especially vintage horror, things that can be problematic in some way, but it's that ability to understand it for yourself and to just see something weird and upsetting, and the reader having this co-creation of meaning is what makes horror so, so, so special. There's also like this great cryptid like creature in here called the Pine Arch creature. So if you like weird online, like it reminded me of Trevor Henderson, like Siren Head type of stuff. Um, will not be going into any kind of spoilers about any of that, but that's like was my initial instinct the first time the Pine Arch creature was even mentioned. So if that appeals to you, I think that you will get a kick out of this book. And one reason why I think that this book may be polarizing in its audience is because one of the movies that it really reminded me of, which I love, is Skinamarink, which is so much about these like slow shots, being able to create meaning for yourself, being able to create fear for yourself, and taking things from this bizarre viewpoint, not being so sure about what is real or not real, what is being imagined versus what is of the physical world. And Skinamarink is very polarizing. So, you know. And it even like talks specifically about this in the book, that it describes things as being like the opposite of a jump scare, which is so much of this book is the opposite of a jump scare. And that like one thing that I really loved is this book had so many slow, mundane moments. Like the main character still has to go to her job at the grocery store, and I was already thinking about it. And then it even speaks to it in the book, where it's like in horror movies, no one has to do anything with their real life past like the first third of the movie, and then they get to focus on being in the horror movie. However, Jory does not just get to focus on being in this horror movie. That's unfolding around her. She still has to go to her boring job. She's still taking care of her child. That's so much of this book, is that she has this child that she needs to be taking care of as well. So that was like one theme that I really loved how it was done in this book, is like that slowness, the boringness, how even maybe this speaks to your life right now, that we see the world kind of falling down around us and you still have to show up to your job every day. Like, this is the end times. You shouldn't have to know what Microsoft Excel is. You should not have to be on Teams. And another theme that I loved in this book is the idea of onlineness. uh I always love a mixed media situation in a book, and this one is really well done where it is blog posts from the old October film haunt. There's emails and Reddit threads, but it is very like interstitial. It's not overwhelmingly that. It's very sparing, but I just think it works really well. And talks about fan culture and talks about how responsible are creators for what their fans decide to do with the work. Um, the idea that people are tracking people down over fan wars, fandom, and being coming too involved with creators' personal lives, and just like the idea of responsibility. There's so many like heavy themes in this, like really cerebral ideas, and I just think that from beginning to end, there is such trust in the reader to figure out what you want to make of those things, that it just creates this like very real, sensual world. And it's so much about the experience of reading it. It did so much for me. Like, I have never been so caught off guard by choices made in a book before. Choices, not, I mean, kind of by the characters, but really by the author. The author was very brave in some choices, especially the ending. I like, that's gonna be a polarizing choice, but it's like such a real literary work that I think will just like stand the test of time. Like, it is so sure of itself. I did not think that I was going to read a horror book that beat Bat Eater for me this year, but yeah, this is my favorite horror book of the years. Still so far, but one of my favorite horror books of all time. A scene that actually got under my skin and made me scared, which doesn't really happen. I will say that it is like the one thing that does get to me is like home invasions, and it was kind of like a home invasion scene. Uh but really it had it all for me. It had the themes, it had the scares. It really showed me a world that I believed and that I've never seen before. Uh to speak about anything that happened in the second half would be such a spoiler, and I don't want to do that to anyone. um Although I will not say it's like there's like twist in the book that like you could get spoiled for the book, because again, it is about the experience of reading it. It is about the experience of going through those transfigurations by yourself, waiting in that time, relishing in that time spent. However, I want you to have the experience that I had. But I highly recommend this book so, so much. Again, I don't think it's for everyone, but I do think that there's other readers out there that are going to be as passionate about it as I am. So, thank you for joining me for this review. And I think that this would be a great one to read for Halloween. So, yeah, if you are into found footage, cursed technology, weird demonic energy, like kind of like Twin Peaks, then I think that this is going to be a great book for you. But I will talk to y'all again soon. Bye.